What's up, guys? I'm here with my good friend Zach Cole. Today we're going to be putting spark blocks on a 1990 Cadillac Brougham. I'm going to be going through step by step on how you can do everything. In the description section you will find a link to where you can buy spark blocks from, as well as any previously posted videos that I have posted in the past. If any of the questions are unanswered, you can look through a lot of those videos and find the answers to the questions that you're looking for. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to want to know is how far away from the ground your frame is. So we need two different measurements. We need with the vehicle all the way down, and then one measurement with the front up but the rear down. So Zach, you want to go ahead and drop the whole car. All right. So now you're going to measure from where you plan to mount your spark blocks. You want to measure up to the frame, which on this is about 9.5 inches. Now if you want to lift the front all the way up, all right. About 7 3/4. So 9.5 and 7 3/4. So you want to know those two measurements first. So the way that I install them is to where when you're driving down the street, if let's say that you're just driving casually, slammed on the ground, they're not going to drag. But as soon as you pop that front up, or you're driving down the street and you've got the front up and the rear up, and you want to drop that rear so it sparks, it'll do it that way, only with the front basically almost all the way up and the rear all the way down. That's the only time it'll spark. Or in this case, we're trying to make it to where when he three wheels, it will also drag the ground. So you want to get those two measurements first, and then we'll go from there. So another quick thing to note is with a lot of lowriders, when you go to three wheel, your back corner, especially with these Cadillacs, it's going to drag the ground on your rear quarter. So as you can see, it's like that. That's why it's kind of pushed in just a little bit. That's why we're putting the spark blocks as far back and as far out as possible. So when it hits, it'll hit the block before it hits the car. So as you can see, which I'm not sure if you can see all the way, but yeah, it's literally basically touching the ground right now. We want that spark block to hit before the car hits. Okay, so his distance was 7 3/4 from it rubbing the ground. So what I've done is I took off and just did 6 inches, because with the spark block attached, it'll be there's a difference here between the time the bolts and the actual block. There's a good solid 3 inches, let's just say. So what I'm trying to do is give an overlap of about 1/2 inch, roughly. So you can see at the lowest point, right here, at the lowest point, these will equal about 8 1/4. I know it's hard to see on the camera, but it's about 8 1/4. So right now, when this goes to hit the ground, it's overlapping by about 1/2 inch. So it'll go ahead and rub the ground right when it hits like that. Okay, now the way that these work is you bolt them, and then once this starts getting to be worn down a little bit, you can loosen them, slide them down a little bit, and then re-tighten them down. Same until basically the block is gone. Now the mount itself, you don't want it so long that it will rub the ground. So that's why this is 6 inches. So it's 7 3/4, which is somewhere around there, 7 3/4. But the mount itself is only 6 inches. Now, what I've done after that is once I figured out, you know, that's the math on where it's actually going to overhang and actually touch the ground, I've then drilled the holes. You mark it, obviously, with the mount, because when you buy these spark blocks, it actually comes with the mount. You can also buy replacement drag blocks. But anyway, so you're putting it on here, you're marking where to put your bolts, So you drill through, make your holes. Now what I've done is I put the screw in there, or the bolt in there, and with the nut on there, and you tighten it down with the bolt just barely sticking up. So what my goal was not to get any slag or anything like that inside of the threads there. So I tightened it down, and then you weld the bolt on the inside. Now I'm obviously going to put a beauty plate on the bottom of this and clean it all up, and it'll look nice after it's all done. But this is the raw version, real crude, real ugly. And then of course everything is getting cleaned up in order to weld it to the bottom of the frame. Now, something that I do want to go over with you is on his is not very long, so it's only 7 3/4 inches. But let's just say that your vehicle is, I don't know, 12 inches. You know, you're going to need 12 inches. Well, since this is short, you don't really need any kind of additional bracing. This is just going to drag. Now, with some that are longer, like 12 inches, you might want to consider adding a reinforcement from the side up a little bit and weld it to the frame as well, like an angled piece to help reinforce it. Because as soon as the car's weight drops on it and starts dragging it, if it's too long, it'll have too much leverage, and it can break the weld off or mess up the frame. So my point is, you might want to add some reinforcement. This is not very long, so this really doesn't need much reinforcement. So that's basically how it goes. That's the only reason why I didn't do it. Anything over about 6 inches, you might want to consider some reinforcement. So that's where we are right now. We're going to put the cap on it, clean it up, and then put it in the car, or weld it in the car. What I'm actually using is 2x4 box tubing. It is 1/4 inch thick and just the same size as the plate here that they use for their mount. So that's what I'm using on this. So one last thing that I'd like to mention with these is that they're intended to be installed so that they hit the ground flat, which will shoot out more sparks. But one small thing that I would suggest is that you create a slight angle like this, something like this. And the reason is because if the edge of this hits like a pothole or a dip in the ground, it can immediately bend the entire mount if it gets caught. We've got a video of over the weekend, right after these being installed, that I'm going to play for you, that he hit a manhole and it bent the entire mount back and everything. So if it had been installed to where it would have slid across it like this, it might have avoided that. It may not have hit the way that it hit, and it may not have bent the mount. So for what it's worth, you might want to try it that way.